So this week, we're gonna start revising materials about a project presentation, how to write a grant, right? So in week 7, you will find this guide as a proposal for writing protocols, which is following the Pan American Health Organization project, and this is a really complete one that can be used for many multidisciplinary projects when you want to make a proposal for, like, let's say, getting funds or develop a research project until a grant or something like that. So just for clarifying, a research grant implies that, let's say you're already a grad student or you're a researcher, or further on, if you decide to be faculty, we professors or researchers are always doing this. So there's always calls for proposals. So for example, in Ecuador, one of the most common grant agencies is CEDIA. So CEDIA, for example, has Fondos Connect, which is a call, I think it's for $75,000 to fund your research projects, because many of you have worked as research assistants before, and it means hiring people, having to buy software or developing models, experiments, and all of that has a cost. That doesn't come out from the salary of a faculty member, because you need to fund your projects or like get financial support in order to do that. So if you have been a research assistant and you get a salary, that usually comes from a grant. So a grant is pretty much an open call of proposals, or kind of like a competitive process, such as a concurso or anything like that, where you pretty much write a proposal and the fund agency will send that to peer reviewers to evaluate how good is your proposal. So it depends on what kind of agency do you want to work for. So for example, the United Nations or some government agencies as well, such as the United States agency in Ecuador, the Flemish Blair projects from Belgium as well, the United Nations, different funds or professional associations open also this. So for example, the University of Cuenca, there's also internal grants that professors can run through the Vicerrectorado de Investigación e Innovación, or as in English, it would be the Provost of Research. So you have to do all these things constantly. So for example, academics are always doing these things. But also, if you want to do research as a career or in your master's degree, there's many calls for grad students in which you can, let's say, make a proposal and you get funds. And those funds will serve to pay time for research assistants, getting software, compensations, or anything like that. Any questions until then? Or about what I just said? Okay, so for example, this is the template that we have online in our course. And this is a guide for writing a research proposal or a protocol. So for example, what in an outline you will mostly have is this structure here. So let me make it smaller. It says like a basic outline of a research protocol, which is always a title. You have to name it. Usually a title is something similar as what you will do in your thesis, that has to name something about the method, name something about the topic of the place. So a guide for writing a good title is always the 5 question words. So what, where, when, with whom, and why. So for example, research theses have titles such as qualitative analysis of architect's drawing techniques and how that improves creativity of professionals. So you will mention if it's qualitative, quantitative, or a mixed methods approach or a participatory approach into what you're doing, or if it's multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, or interdisciplinary, depending. Let's say you are working with communication and also physicians or health studies. So you can also highlight that in the title of your project. So for example, a project summary is like a brief summary of what the project will do. That's not an abstract, it's just what you're aiming for. So a research protocol is something you will say, if I get the money, I will do this. If I get this proposal approved, I will do. So the perfect verb tense to write it is in future. It's like when you're writing your thesis, like the protocol of the proposal and title that you present to the Junta Académica in your university or degree is like that. And then you will have a statement of the problem. So you will have to make a scientific justification to say why the topic you're going to address is relevant, very similar to your thesis. But here specifically, what is different and always peer reviewers look for is pretty much you to talk about how it's relevant to the context to the global issues. So a really good resource here is to go to the 2030 social development goals or sustainable development goals of the UNESCO or the United Nations, and try to address one of those agendas of how this can be done. Yeah. Then it goes to the justification of the use of the results, how you're going to use the data you're going to get and how that's applicable to something else. So for example, let's say about Caro's topic that she's looking at drawing in architects, how that data will be useful for later. So for example, she will say things like, out of these resources or this data, faculty for architecture schools in Latin America will have salient or relevant information to plan course development or curriculum or different architecture programs that consider drawing as a professional skill, for example. Or if you're working into chain supply, such as Gustavo's research, chain supply issues, you say like, okay, the data of this can be useful for improving this specific process of a chain supply, which is useful in, I don't know, textiles and food industry and all of that. I'm inventing. So you here have to say how what you're doing is applicable in different levels. So a good advice is to think about the advancement of research, but also professional development or economic benefits from developing a procedure, especially on business or productivity attained projects such as that. Any questions about that? So specifically, these two statements are key because this will tell your peer reviewers how effective and how relevant is it what you want to do. You can have like a great idea, but if somebody else has done that study 1,000 times or it's fairly old approach to something that needs something new, you won't get the funds. So the key word here is to think about innovation, how this is adding to the literature, to knowledge, to business, into something new. So this has to have some level of novelty that it's interesting for an agency to fund you and invest on you. Also think about the theoretical framework. So here you will have to talk about theories, or marco teórico is the section to think about prior studies, theories that allow you to interpret that, models that people has applied into many things, and prior research in your same field, kind of leading you the way to go what you want to do. And also, if you're working in mixed methods or quantitative, you will have to have a hypothesis here. In qualitative studies, it's not that relevant to have a hypothesis rather than good research questions by the end of your theoretical framework. Then you will go into your research objectives, something general and something specific. So depending on how big is the scope of the grant, you will have to think about one big, broader general objective, and then from that, specify specific things you're going to observe. So let's say if you're going to do a multidisciplinary research, here, for example, we have done food industry development. So right now, for example, the grant that I'm working on with some colleagues, it's how to explore meat analogs into industry, but also productivity and how to communicate it to the community. So our team is composed from somebody in food industry, on chemical engineering, communication. So each of us will look at different things. So our research team will have to be structured to address each of those goals. So for example, I will cover all that communication, and that's one research goal that I will be attaining, and the other researchers will have their specific research goals. Then you go into methodology, and here it's pretty much what we have talked about, and you already know from your degree, which is a method, is qualitative, quantitative, how is the data collection tools that you're going to use, how you're going to analyze that data, the universe of study, the sample selection, the observation and selection criteria, the proposed interventions if it's applicable, data collection procedures, the instrument used for that, and the procedures to ensure critical considerations in research. So for example, here is the IRB. The last one that's ethical considerations is the IRB process, which we already saw on this course. And then you will have to think about the analysis. So once you collected the data, what you're gonna do with it, how you're gonna observe, extract knowledge, and from that, propose a discussion about what you found. Another section is the references, the timetable or the chronograma, the budget. Like you can use a spreadsheet to say, what do you need for each stage, how it's gonna be used. And then the annexes, such as the survey templates, if you have any matrices of observation or for experiments have to go here, and so on and so on. So any questions about this section?
I have a question, Denise.
Yeah, go ahead.
But it's like a general question. How about the budget? Like I don't know, like the average for research. How much is the average?
Well, depends on many things. There's research projects that will be small, that could be $5,000, up to research projects that are almost $1 million or euros. It depends the scope of what you want to do, and how many people is involved in the project. So there's for example, there's big funding agencies such as the NSF, the Science National Foundation in the United States, or the Department of Energy. And those grants are fairly more demanding because actually, to be honest with you, right now, funding agencies are looking not for, small projects in social sciences or just STEM field things. They want solutions to the current issues and the dramas of the world. So those big buck, I call them the big bucks, like the big funding amounts want those complex issues to be addressed. And those will fund up to the biggest grant I ever seen has been $10 million. And those are fairly multidisciplinary issues, but also open opportunities for young people to do their master's degree and their PhDs. So for example, in the university, I studied in the University of New Mexico, the College of Engineering was one of the biggest awardees of funds. All the faculty in that college have collected in 1 year almost $1 billion in grants. $1 billion, not $1 million, $1 billion with a B. So what that means, because they were people from structuring engineering, civil engineering, chemistry, all of those engineering groups are like kind of like Balsai from University of Cuenca. But those big grants are usually tied with doctoral projects and master's projects. So for example, I remember one of my good friends who's a chemical engineer got her PhD fully funded through a grant of the Department of Energy and Environmental Services here in the US, fully funded PhD, but she worked there as a research assistant. And that project seek to clear out water from uranium deposits in the southeast of all the United States. So the southeast of all the United States is pretty much all the thicker part of Latin America, like Barbados, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Brazil in territory. So all of that will make more expensive the research because you have to, collect water samples from different rivers and do the analysis and do 1,000, if not more, experiments to see what if you're doing works in order to reproduce in large scale on the rivers before damaging more the waters. So that project lasted almost 10 years. And there was like 15 full tenure faculty working on that. And under each faculty member, there was a team of 6 PhD students. But they had to pay everything for that. So the university will give you the lab, but the technology you will need, extra machines you will need, was a lot of money. So in faculty, pretty much, we usually don't take any funds from the grant because doing research is fairly expensive. So you have to even budget how many times you're gonna fail experiments. So you'll say like, oh, that professor is rich. No, like you will get probably only funded your trips to go into conferences to present your research papers about the project and your plane tickets. And of course, like there's options faculty do, for example, for working over the summer to pay you an extra salary, because when a faculty member leaves, we leave for vacation, like it's not, we're not doing anything. We are collecting data, going to the field, always doing something. So that's extra labor on top of what we do. So they pay us something a little bit over the salary, but usually representative enough not to be biased and, don't take the whole $1 billion. So it's just like barely making in the summer $2,000 more what you usually do, and plus paying all your research assistants a living wage. So it depends on the scope. There's other more little projects that are more fundable, but if you want to get your research funded, you have to do multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary projects. Like, let's say somebody from law with gender plus communication. Because if you guys think about, let's make a short exercise. Let's take 5 minutes to think about one of the dramas of the world that worry you the most as a future researcher. It could be in your field, it could be in something else. Let's say like, I don't know, the pollution or climate change and these things. So let's take 5 and think about that. I'm just gonna pause the record that we were talking about. Anybody wants to share their drama about the world right now? Which would be one topic that really worries you, that you think it's relevant and affects everybody?
Can I share mine?
Yeah, sure, Caro.
Oh, well, I think nowadays Latin America architecture is becoming increasingly hostile due to security index. While there are projects in countries like Japan and more considered like more secure,
Mm-hmm.
that have almost no walls, and are really open to like the neighbor. And this is all together with the well, the apogee, the I don't know how to say it, but the the economic apogee of the real estate industry that promotes global economic inflation. Um, what I can say, for the same amount of money, years ago we can afford a bigger and high and better life quality in a bigger house or in a bigger apartment. And nowadays, the construction companies um, tend to make the bare minimum to not break the laws of construction, and offer the bare minimum to the um to the people that are going to buy their apartments. And for a huge amount of money, and they share it like it was like the best buy ever. And probably it's not. And I have a lot of concern about it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's like my problem. And
Okay, great, Caro. Thank you for sharing. I think that sounds pretty much like a multidisciplinary issue because it, of course, is architectural design, but also there's sociological issues involved, because there's things about safety and political issues around why maybe city ordinances permit those specific ways of construction as well. So there's many things, policy, sociology, things that you can combine in that same project, right? So in order to develop like a holistic approach that can respond to all of that, you have to do an at least multidisciplinary approach. So that's a project, for example, that can get good funding through the bigger grants because you will have several disciplines. So let's say in policy, let's revise the city ordinances, what it says. Let's also, for example, make qualitative research about people who's building houses or remodeling houses to make it safer. Do they have any issues? Do they want like any break-ins into those houses? Any other related or more concerning crimes such as assassinations or kidnapping or anything like that, right? So there's many things you can do with that project and join forces with other researchers, for example. Anybody else wants to share their idea or one of the dramas that worry you?
Okay, hello teacher, hello classmates.
Hi, Stefania.
Uh, I can share my worry issues. In this case, I think that one of them be the impact of the deep fakes on trust in digital media, with regarding with the uh, intelligence artificial. So it is a new complement to influence this space. So this is the new ways to um, produce new forms that manipulate videos and images.
Yeah.
It is the internet.
Yeah, like fake news and all of that, and how that affects maybe also political polarization and
Yes.
right. Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. I completely agree. That's also one of the things that worry me because Stephanie, I'm also in communications, you're more in
Okay.
journalism. All of that worries
Yes.
me. Yeah.
Yes, this is another the concern about the intelligence and artificial in this the count of the journalists and the new media.
Right. Yeah. AI is one of the bigger concerns right now from many perspectives, right? Like why maybe AI can generate fake news or at least the tools for making a fake news, like an image or something that's manipulated that looks pretty real, right? So for example, in that topic, I'm asking you back, what kind of approach you will want to do? Like maybe technological, maybe journalistic, or maybe
Mm,
like what would you be thinking about?
I think that my focus in this in the research it would be the journalism, and especially because this is about the disinformation or the misinformation. If someone to use this AI to manipulate the images or videos in the in the red.
Right, like in the networks, yeah, social media. I
Yes.
really think it's a good issue. Also, in terms, probably I will suggest or think about also psychological impacting audiences, because communication is nothing without an audience. Like everything it's written, such as journalism, pieces, or campaigns, really need like an audience. If you don't have an audience, there's nothing you can do, right? So probably I will think about a psychological approach to see how people feel when they see fake news, and maybe if it raises anxiety or stress or even depression of things that they
Yes,
see.
how affect the manipulate and information in the internet, in the networking, about
Right,
with you respect the audience and the governments or the politicians or another people that we view of this information.
right. To make it completely multidisciplinary, also you can combine, let's say, communication psychology, like journalism, psychology, and maybe somebody from political science, because that needs to be regulated somewhere, like, the use of AI for specific things, or like if people start creating, like, I don't know, panic campaigns about political things that can destabilize
Yes,
the government. Mm-hmm.
in this space in the campaigns is the much exposition about these methods to manipulate and attack another people on each other.
Right, totally. So there's even sociological things there that would be very interesting to see. And those probably one of the good bad things that I have to confess and be completely honest with you. Try to do projects if you want to go like broader research. Think about projects that are not inside the same discipline. So for example, not all in social sciences. So this project will be all social sciences. Maybe somebody from engineering, computer science, to analyze how the algorithm works, and more technological approach will be make this project interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, because there will be social sciences plus STEM fields. So those are combination grant agencies, like, because there's social and also technological fields. So thank you, Stefania. Anybody else? Okay, great. So for example, what you are gonna be needing to do, let me reshare my screen with you. Sorry about that. Let's see. Where that went? It closed down. No, it's here. Yeah. Where it go? It closed. I'm sorry. So let me show you this. So for example, if we look at a project, sadly, I cannot share this with you because it's a research project that we got some clearances to show and some others not to, because there's patient information in here. However, this is how a proposal presented to CEDIA looks like. So for example, in budget, we asked to $91,562. And also from CEDIA, we got $45,000. So it's over $1,100 in funding. And this project was pretty much name associated factors with responses to COVID-19 of chronic patients with asthma. So there were like physicians, communication professionals, genetic health sciences, and all of that. We wanted to know if somebody that has asthma as a child and gets COVID gets their DNA modified or not. The response was no, yes, in some cases, and say no in others. But in order to determine this, the project pretty much had to run at least 100 experiments analysis on blood and DNA on people, and making DNA analysis before COVID and after COVID in over 100 people. It's a lot of money. Like, it's a lot of expensive things in labs and also specialists. So for example, here is listed all the professors that were involved from several universities. And in description of the project, we will talking, for example, about how COVID was an issue. Still, we didn't know how the impact of the illness is gonna affect people in the long run. And also how studies were like just briefly done. This is a 2021 research grant, and now there's many knowledge, but back then there was nothing. Still, we were like online fully, and people didn't know the effects on long-term health and long COVID. So we did a lit review at state of art of whatever we knew. And then we talk about asthma treatments, and this was developed by the people that were in health sciences. And then also we were talking about other protocols to do asthma. And then we said like, okay, with everything we know of how to prevent or manage asthma, we're gonna add how to prevent COVID and manage COVID with asthma. So my specific section was developing a health communication campaign for children and teenagers in a way that is very understandable and attainable for them. So for example, here, we had several specific goals and the general goal. So it was pretty much analyzing the factors associated to the therapeutic response of children with asthma between 5 and 17 years old in the COVID context of SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. And then as we were many teams, we had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams working. Each team had a specific goal, as I show you. So some people were doing the genetical analysis, other people was assessing the overall health state. Other ones were researching about the barriers and facilitators of people that already had asthma, plus handling all the safety measures for COVID. And we specifically did the health education piece here. So for example, when you do a timetable, it's pretty much how long it's gonna take. So for example, getting the protocols approved and the IRB and how much that's gonna cost, the training the teams need and how that's gonna cost, and who's involved, which is the responsible party of the research team in that. So you will have to divide tasks, put it a timeline, resources, and the people that's responsible for it. So we work over that, and we did many other specific things about that. Then we went into the timetable of what we're gonna submit, like as part of the project. So grant agencies will ask you to make several deliverables along the project. This project was funded for 2 years. So it meant that we designed that every 6 months we will report something of the state of what we're finding for. And we did like reports, lab analysis, standardization of procedures, or like a bunch of deliverables and reports and articles, research articles to present what we were doing. And then it comes like the methodology, which you all guys already know how to, and you also can see in our Google Classroom. Let me go back to that here. you can see it here. So when we were revising this section of the protocol, you will pretty much revise this proposal and you will see how that matches as well. So CDIA is not following the same, but this is pretty standardized. It depends the call. So one thing you have to do is always think about the grant agency and the protocol form. You don't have to make your own form. You have to do in the form that the funding agency is requiring. But mostly all of them have standardized this outline with the same names or slightly different, but the contexts are great. You will find in this guide here all the indications to write each section that we have revised in this class session. And what I aim to do for you as a final project is to write a short protocol about following this outline for the research project that you want to do. And I'm just gonna grade you, that's gonna be your final deliverable for this course. So this is all the detail of the outline we saw above. So if you wanna revise or you have any questions about what to put in each section, you can make a question for us here, or you can also email me later. So I'm gonna make an assignment for you, and I wanna use a couple minutes of this session before we finish to try to find a date for the delivering the final project. So today is July 2, and soon next week you will have finals. So I would like to propose that you can deliver this final project by July 30. Is that okay?
I think that, yeah, because in the week from 15th of July to the 20, I have my finals and also my my final presentation of my undergraduate thesis. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great, Caro. Anybody else has any proposals given time? Is July 30 good for everybody? Or would you like something earlier or something later? But before, I will have to submit everything before August 3rd, because that's when the system of grades closes at Cuenca. Paul says yes. Anybody else has any questions? Gustavo as well. Ariel as well, Martina, Stephanie. Yeah, okay, great, guys. I'm gonna stop recording right now.